Hi friends, I'm recording this spot from a convention where moms are busy making plans about next year. So I think maybe one of my biggest pieces of advice as you plan is not to plan too far forward, okay? So you have your children for this coming year, and it takes some planning. You've got to spend time evaluating where you are and where you'd like to be, but don't future trip. Don't plan so far forward that you have it cemented in your head, because life happens. Things are going to come up and you're going to need to have some flexibility. So that's going to be my biggest piece of advice about planning for the future. Don't plan too far forward. Yes, have a general idea, but don't be locked in and love your plans so much that you are not able to make adjustments when your children need you to adjust, and they're where they're at educationally and developmentally, they need you to adjust.
Talking about planning, what is on my mind these days is all things high school. My second child is about to graduate from high school this May, and so one of my top tips for thinking about high school is to think about what they want to do during high school besides doing school. If they are college bound, it is important to have something besides school to include on their application. And my two kids did things that were extremely different from each other. My oldest was involved in the scouting program, and he ended up going all the way to Eagle Scout and had so many volunteer hours. And my daughter took a different route to do something outside of school. She ended up working. She got a job at 15 during high school and worked, and that is just a really good experience to have also to include on scholarship applications and the college admissions applications, because they are looking for well-rounded people, and they want to see what they're involved with in their spare time, and that is something to think about during the high school years, or maybe just right before you get there.
When the new catalog comes in, my appetite is whetted for our new level that we're going to do next year. All the new books, all the new adventures, and it is so tempting to just jump in and buy. But what I like to do is actually pause and look back, reflect on our year, and see if there was anything that didn't work for us. Do we need to make any changes, whether it's to the handwriting program? One year we had to do that. We had to switch from a reason for handwriting to handwriting without tears. Maybe you need to slow things down. We need to do that. One year we did level D with my 8-year-old son who struggled with reading, and we needed to just slow things down for him. He was not able to read those length chapter books at that pace. So we ended up slowing down D and E over 3 years, and that's exactly what he needed. You may also need to add something. So one year we decided we needed to add a grammar program to get a little bit more focused grammar work. And another year in high school, we added a focused poetry study that I had found at a convention. And it was great to just deep dive into poetry and all that encompasses that. So before you jump in and buy new things, evaluate where you are. And you may not need to make a change at all, in which case I would say don't. Don't be tempted by the catalogs that come in the mail, by the new stuff that's on the convention floor. You can shop for fun things, games, and things like that. But as far as your curriculum, if it's working, then don't fix it.
Hey friends, as you're planning for the upcoming school year, one of my best tips is to try to get to a local homeschool convention. Even if it's not a big one, if it's just a gathering of some people around you, that's a great source of encouragement and camaraderie and feeling like you aren't out on an island. So try to get to some kind of gathering of homeschool friends. It's a great place to get all the little things you need for your curriculum after your Sonlight order, and a chance to see some fun and exciting things that other home vendors are doing and whatnot. I always came home with a Bible study book or a prayer journal or something like that, just something fresh for the new school year. But as you're planning, remember to think back about what has gone well and celebrate that for sure. And if things weren't going well, reach out. We're happy to help you brainstorm and work through some other things to improve those areas that maybe you didn't love. So be encouraged. You are almost to the finish line for this year, and next year is exciting. I love this time of year. It was always one of my favorite times in our homeschool. I hope y'all have a great day.
My favorite way to plan shopping for next year's curriculum and kind of planning ahead as to what we're doing is first, I make a list of all the subjects I need to cover for each child separately. And then I make a list of everything that is going well, that really all I want to do is buy the next thing. So if you just did HBLD and you loved it, just write down HBLE. That's all I do for planning things that are going well. For things that are maybe not going so well, we want to change it up, or I want to try something different. Then I write those things down like with question marks. And then I have a list of things to investigate and research that's not overwhelming, because I already know that most of what we're doing, we're just going to keep doing. And the things I need to investigate, whether it's look at convention or look online or whatever, then that's a much shorter list. And so less overwhelming and more fun to just, research and investigate. So happy shopping.
Early on in my homeschool experience, I used to plan really far ahead. And it was because I was so excited about doing all of the upcoming Sonlight levels and reading all of the books that I just could not help myself. But what I have learned since, and the longer I homeschool, is that I really do just plan 1 or maybe 2 years at a time based on the individual level my child is at. And this is something I would highly encourage you to do. Even when combining, look at the children you have and figure out what's going to work best for them, where they're at right now. It is better to meet them where they are than to push too far ahead and find out that you have to slow down later. Now, if things go great and they're doing really well, feel free to pick up the pace if you'd like. The only exception to this is in high school. I do have a high school daughter right now, and so we sat down and figured out what classes we would like her to take to get enough credits before the end of high school, and we planned that out the summer before her freshman year. That way, now all we have to do is record the classes she takes and her grades, and we're all set. But it really does not have to be nearly as challenging as it seems at first, and I would encourage you to go with the flow and make sure to post all your questions in the Sonlight Connections app for assistance from other Sonlighters.
So in addition to planning online with all the great digital resources on the Sonlight website that help you make sure you're getting everything that you want and nothing that you don't want, I also like to plan on paper just to be able to see it at a glance. For each of my students, I like to have kind of a plan laid out for each of them, and I've done that on notebook paper or typing paper before, or this is the Sonlight planner, and the planner pages. I had to find one that wasn't filled out, so this is, I think it has several, maybe 4 sheets like this, and then if you need more, you can copy those. And so you have name, grade, age, focus, and goals. And then you have your subjects, program titles, dates, and prices, and then notes at the bottom, student picture at the top. I did this plan. Generally every year I make a list just so that I can go back and look and see, is there something that I haven't purchased yet that I need to purchase? Do I have everything? Am I ready to go? And this just makes it very quick at a glance. And then there's a year at a glance chart that looks like this. This just has January, February, and the other side of the page is March, April. Then you have May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and you have all the months here. And with this, I would plan out my year. I would look at a calendar and see what we had on our schedule for the year and just write in whichever dates we plan to have school. I started with number 1 in these little squares and counted up to 180 for the number of school years, days in a traditional school year. And as we went through, then I would change that from pencil to pen so that I can know what we actually did, because we might move it around a little bit during the year as we went. So these were helpful tools for me, either, in the Sonlight planner or just on paper, getting that plan made for the school year.
Hello and welcome to this month's Homeschool Helps and Hacks. We're going to talk all about planning ahead. So whether you are trying to figure out what you're doing for your next school year or you're trying to plan for 5 years from now, we're going to give you some hacks for doing that in a way that makes sense for your family. I am Sunny, and I am being joined today by two of our Sonlight mentors, Christy and Jen. Let's see, Christy, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
I'm Christy, and I am a mom of 4 sons. This year we have 2 high schoolers and 2 college students, a freshman and a junior, and a freshman and a junior. And I'm glad to be here. I enjoy helping in the community and love that we have been homeschooling for 15 years. It's fun.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen. I am a homeschool mom of 4, and my youngest is in high school, just like Christy. I homeschooled all the way through 4 kids, and so we were at it for, I guess, 23 years, and now I am retired. So, but planning was always my favorite part, so I am happy to talk about planning today.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited to have you both here. I should have mentioned I've got 2 kids that are homeschooled with Sonlight as well. They are 14 and 9. And so we've been homeschooling since about 2012, I guess, with my older child. And we still have about 10 more years before my youngest is done. So still right in the thick of it and still planning year to year what I'm doing and seeing how that changes with different children as well. So we'll talk about all those things too. But let's start with kind of the immediate goal of when you should start thinking about your next school year. Is that something you need to plan way far in advance? Can you do it, the week before you plan to order curriculum? What have you guys done in the past, and what would you suggest for people?
There were several years where I did not plan super far ahead. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen the next year. I wasn't really sure, are we definitely doing this or that? We had several moves in there, which just always shakes up everything. And so there were a couple of years where I bought my curriculum over the summer. And when it arrived, we pretty much jumped right in because it was the beginning of fall.
Yes, and I would say there's no one absolutely right answer. However, there is a common answer for Sonlight. After the first year, I think you should do it, first of all, when it's best for you. But after my first year, I did start planning earlier because of a lot of reasons. The first one is because it's fun. I love it. It helps when months like January and February get long. To think ahead and plan for what's next. I just really think that that's a lot of fun, and that may or may not. My husband is not the biggest planner in the world, so if you're like him, then that may not be your jam, and that's okay. But it always gave us a boost in finishing this year's work, to be talking a little bit with even the kids, kind of getting them excited. Like, when we finish this, we're going to do this, and they would be like, oh. And then they would go get, and then when the box comes, then it gets really exciting. And then they're like, "Ooh, I want that book." Well, let's finish up what we're doing first, and then we'll pick up. You could use that. That can give you some mileage. So I think it's smart, because when I plan over time, I can kind of, maybe I'll work on math at this point, at this point in the January, and then at the end of January, maybe I'll decide on HBL, and I kind of just leisurely have time to do that. And there were years that I did it all at once, and it was a little stressful because maybe I had an event to attend for Sonlight or something, and then I came home and ordered, and it was a little stressful. But I do think that it's smart. It can be fun. And March tended to be the time when there were lots of great specials. And so there's a little boost with that. So that tended to be the time that I started to aim toward.
were also years where like I wanted to have everything planned before I got to go to a convention so that I knew if I had any questions, like if I wasn't sure about, foreign language or if I wasn't sure about handwriting, I could go and look and get my hands on actual books and kind of pick and choose those last couple of bits of things that I wasn't sure about in my living room. So sometimes, if you get to go to a live event like convention, that can change the timing of planning too.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when my kids were younger, I used to, as soon as I would get the catalog, would be when I'd kind of start getting excited about all the levels. And early on, I thought I knew like, oh, we're going to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And over time, I realized like, oh, maybe that's not the best plan for my child. Maybe I should go a little slower, or, I remember when level J came out, History of Science, and my daughter was maybe 7 at the time, and she was super, super excited about it then. Well, by the time she got to the age where she's like, oh, I don't like science, I don't want to do anything science. And so she elected to skip right from age to 100. So there are things like that. Now, I do think my younger child will probably be way more about J than his sister was, because he loves science. But again, he's still 9. There's still plenty of time. So I would caution you not to plan too far ahead, because that may change. But yeah, when you get that catalog, that's a great time to start looking and kind of seeing. And like you guys mentioned, the best promotions are in the spring. So I would encourage you not to wait until you're actually ready for your next year, because you might have missed out on some of those great sales and opportunities like that. Let's talk a little bit about that planning too far ahead. Is there such a thing? Is it okay if you start fantasizing about what levels you're going to do or what products you might want? What do you guys think?
Well, fantasizing is always a good idea, but actual planning, I found, just a couple years ago, I found a plan that I had made. I had written it all out for kids every year. And I had written this out when like my kids were little. And about 50% of it was kind of the way it happened. Christy's nodding. And the other 50% of it was like, girl, what were you even thinking? You have no idea how these kids are going to, like, what they're going to turn out to be focused on, or what they're going to want to do, or what, new fancy things like J are going to come out. So it was a fantasizing worksheet. I see people on the app, I'm sure Christy you do too, where they're like, my child is 8, I'm worried about what do we do this year to make sure we get them all in before high school. And it's like, you really can't worry about too far ahead this year and next year.
Yeah, I say no, there's no such thing as planning too far ahead but there's a big if. That is if, you need to gauge progress in a subject without that pressure of maybe unintentionally having unrealistic expectations. We don't mean to have unrealistic expectations, but if you're counting on a developmental skill prematurely, so you're expecting something to happen and it's not happening, then that can get frustrating. And I see that happen again and again with parents. They get frustrated because this expectation isn't met. And it's really about a developmental skill. And we really, just like with potty training and all of those things, if you're counting on, oh, well, they're this age, so they're going to be writing in cursive, and they're this age, so they're going to be reading by the end of the year for sure. Or, whatever it is, if that's the kind of thing and you're planning and you write it down, and if you're going to write it down and it's going to bother you later, yourself, maybe don't write it down, or use pencil, because pencil is a great thing. You can erase it. And so just if it's not going to be discouraging for you, and, and if you're good at writing in pencil and changing as you go, then I think it's perfectly fine. Green light on the planning. But And if you don't get too married to an idea that you might later realize has a better solution. So you might in your own time realize, wait a minute, this is not going to work well. It sounded like a good idea, but it's really not. And you might come to that on your own. So if you don't get too married to it, I say this, because, I've heard from a mom that was so upset that this wasn't part of my plan or that type of thing. And so I do think that we can kind of shoot ourselves in the foot by getting too, married to it before, but keep it fun, use pencil, hold it loosely, stay open to what might work better, and then go for it. And have a planning retreat or start some fun traditions, make detailed charts and graphs, plan forever like Jen did, whatever you need to do. I think that's fine.
Well, and Christy, don't you think that like when our kids are little, we don't even know what to factor in. Like we don't know whether they're going to be athletes or artists, or whether they're going to want to focus on creative writing, or whether they're going to be like at 16 being like, I'm going to college, I'm going to med school, this is my focus, of course,
Right.
And like I had all these plans for my kids, but then they turned into actual people, and like then they had plans and it didn't always mesh with what my expectations from so long ago. And so I agree, if you're going to make far plans, you have to hold them loosely, because you do not know what your kids are going to turn out to be focused on.
Yes, totally true. And don't be discouraged if you're starting late in the game and you're watching this later in the season. No, that's totally fine. I had years that I ordered things in July or August. That happens sometimes. If you've had a move, if you've had a baby, if you've had life that has happened, that's totally fine. It happens to us too. We've all had years like that. So be encouraged.
You guys are pros. Thank you for continuing on. My internet dropped and I was panicking trying to get back on there, but it looks like you kept it going. So I will jump right back in there with you. I do appreciate that you brought up the encouragement that, if you feel like it's too late or you haven't had a good plan in place, that is totally fine. I've had plans that didn't work out, and so I've had to pivot in the middle of whatever I was going to do. If you've watched any of these other sessions, I've been pretty open about the fact that I pushed my son faster than he should have gone, in that I was trying to make him do what his sister did. So she did A, B, C, D, E, like all the way up 1 year at a time. And so I thought, well, he could do the same thing at the same age, but then he struggled to learn how to read. And so we made it through ABC. And I was looking at D, which is a decent step up in the the students' reading ability that they need to have to handle all of those readers. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? He's now too old for like K or any of those levels that we had not done. We had already done ABC. So I had to slow down level D. And so because of that, that meant that I did not need to order E the same year. I, am now like a year behind where my daughter was, but it's not behind because it's perfect for him. He is getting so much more out of this level than if we would have tried to push through at the same pace. And over the course of that year or two, we've kind of stretched other things out. He realized he liked more of a year-round schedule because that meant he could do less school each week. He prefers that to, having a nice long break in the summer, versus my daughter wants the longest big break she can get. So she'll push herself to move a little faster during the school year. And so I've learned with the two kids that, my plans are not necessarily going to be what works. I love whichever one of you said your kids became real people, right? They're not just extensions of you. They are all going to function differently and do things differently. So if your plans seem like they're falling apart, do not worry about it. Just pick up where you're at and say, okay, what does the student need? Do they need more time learning to read? Do they need more time with this math concept? What is it that they're going to need more time for? Or if you've got the kid that is flying through, keep going. There's nothing that says, oh, I've done my 36 weeks of this level. I guess my school year is done, even if it's months before you plan to end. So if you have questions about how to do that for a child maybe that isn't doing the level at the pace you thought they would, definitely ask us in the app, though, because we would love to troubleshoot that with you and share our own experiences. Because, yeah, between all of our kids, that stuff happens all the time. Go ahead, Christy.
I was going to say, and just real talk, it's not rocket science if you're planning late. I know, that I've said I started in January and decide this, and February and decide this, but if you're under the gun, Jen, basically, if you did D for HBL, what should I do next?
E.
And if I did Algebra 1, what comes next? Well, maybe I want to look in the app and ask people, did you do geometry or did you do Algebra 2? There are camps for that. They will give you opinions, and we will give you opinions, and we all have them. And so there are things like that do have either or. But then, if you did Science B, what can you do next, Jen?
Science C. Absolutely. Do the next thing. Well, and that's what I always make the argument to people that feel so overwhelmed. Like, first make a list of what is working. If D was wonderful, do E. If language arts D was wonderful, do language arts E. If science B was great, do science C. If you're like, do I still need to do spelling? She's doing really well. It's starting to feel like busy work. Maybe it's time to stop. Or do the next thing. Do I need to switch programs? Not if it's working. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, huge, overwhelming thing, because a lot of it, you can probably just do the next thing and then tweak the things that maybe aren't going so well.
Mm-hmm. Or slow the pace in something where you only do handwriting 2 days a week, because they still need it, because we don't want it to get out of control, but they've got it under, they've got it going. And so maybe you can just pull back on that and emphasize something else. So adjustments, little adjustments, or, do the next thing. Those are, great. That's great advice.
Absolutely. That brought up a point, though, that I wanted to ask about. Like, say you have a student who's done A, B, C, D is next, but maybe they have a younger sibling that you want to combine with them, or, maybe they've only done A, B, they're a little bit younger, KA, something like that, and now they have a younger sibling that you want to combine for HBL, science, those types of subjects. What types of things should you take into account when planning to combine with a younger student who maybe has not been doing school with the older student yet?
I think there are people that handle this all sorts of ways. I've talked to families who use only one level every year, no matter what. And then if they get to G and they have a very younger student, they might say, oh, we'll read some of B because we have it on the shelf, but we're going to all do G. And if there's a book that is above their head, okay, fine. We read about Vikings here and it says this, or maybe not in G, but anyway, whatever. We read about ancient Egypt here, and we're, don't really want to read about Mara with the little guys. So, let's pull out something from ancient Egypt. We'll read about Tut in, the early level. We'll grab a book from B. And so that's what they did, and it worked well. One level. It kind of blew my mind the first time I met someone that did that. I tended to do my oldest son separately from everyone else because he was a little older, and his younger brother had a little communication thing going on. He was having speech therapy. So they were they were close in age, but very far apart developmentally. And so it worked best for my middle two guys to combine together, and little brother listened in. Then when little brother got old enough that I thought, I want to do something separate with him, then sometimes what I did is I had a focus level, like this is my main level. And then my younger guy, I'm going to do on a different pace, because sometimes he listens in and sometimes he doesn't. So he might listen in for B with his older siblings, even though he's 4 or whatever. He's going to listen in with us 2 or 3 days a week. Okay, on a day that he doesn't come plop in my lap, then I read to him from K or pre-K or whatever I'm doing with him, and I do it on maybe 2 or 3 day a week schedule and just finish it over a little bit longer time. That would have made me twitch at the beginning, and maybe it makes you twitch now, but by the, we all kind of, relax a little bit as we get into this homeschooling thing and we figure it out. And so that is something that worked well for me to do Even if I was doing separate levels, I kind of considered where everybody is, where everybody was, who I wanted to pair together, how I thought that would go, and just kind of decided.
Well, in the families that I have talked to about this, I never could combine. My kids were just too far apart. I'm extremely jealous of all of you who just like buy one program for 3 kids. Anyway, it seems like if you have to know who you're aiming for. So are you teaching to the older one and like kind of bringing little brother along? Are you teaching to the second one knowing that you're going to have to supplement for big brother and like ease up on expectations for the youngest one? Like and I think it could work either way. Like if you had um a an HBL that was the kind of proper age for an older child, and then you just ease up expectations for the younger ones. They get, of course, their own math, their own language arts, all that stuff. But I also think it can work if you aim for the younger one and then supplement up for the older one. But if you know who you're aiming for and you're not just constantly trying to juggle, I think it's a more peaceful combo than those people who are like, I'm trying to make this perfect for everybody. I mean, it's not going to be perfect for everybody. But if the oldest one is a voracious reader and you can say, we're talking about Vikings this week, we're going to go to the library, bring me a biography, 2 nonfiction books, and 1 fiction book that fits in. And they're like, yes, ma'am. And then they go and bring you 20. Like, this is not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So
know your
my
people.
my question would be like, which kid are we aiming this age at? And then would you rather supplement up? Would you rather loosen expectations for a younger? Because it can work either way. But I think if there's a decision and a focus, that kind of makes it easier than that feeling that it's never quite right for any of them.
And sometimes test your assumptions, because I had one year that I had 2 siblings, 2 brothers that were clashing. And it's just like them sharing a room. I have 4 children and had 2 and 2. And, personality wise, you can kind of say, okay, it's going to be easiest if these 2 share, and you kind of make those decisions. It's kind of similar with pairing them into an HBL and a history Bible literature combination. Also think about things like, one thing that was frustrating to me is I was forever at piano lessons, and I had 3 hours at piano, or 2 hours, full 2 hours at piano lessons. And if this one was in, I couldn't do the history Bible literature, and then that was frustrating to me. So think about who has lessons or who is going to be at the same place at the same time, because it's annoying to have that one child always ready. And then sometimes it's like, if I just did a separate thing with him, we could have been done 2 hours ago, but we're waiting on someone who has this or that. So think about their schedules, your schedule, and then also test your assumptions. Like if I had a year that 2 were, just really not getting along well, and I put them together anyway, and it was the best thing for their relationship, and we worked through things that year, and it was good for them. And maybe you get through halfway through the year and you're like, okay, this was not worth it, we're not doing this, and that's fine. Maybe let the older read some of it independently and choose a different time. I have read the same thing to 2 separate students at 2 separate times in a pinch on a piano lesson day or something like that, just to get us down the road for the next thing. I don't like to do that, but hey, it works. But I do think test your assumptions sometimes. If you're thinking these 2 would never combine well because of this or that, try it. Maybe test it out and see what you think. It could be a good solution, and it could actually, in my case, I would kind of did it hesitantly, and it ended up being the best thing we could have done that year. So.
Well, and I love you brought up a bunch of different things, right? The schedule and the extracurricular activities and those types of things too, because my kids are 5 years apart, so combining was never an option for us. But I do often look at, okay, is this child going to be in a lesson? When do I have the other child one-on-one. And so for my kids, they always do better when I get to work with them one-on-one, as opposed to together. So I like to pick, what can I do while this child's at a lesson? Or, what can I do while this child is occupied doing independent work? One of you mentioned that as well, that as your kids get older and can do things more independently, that maybe that's going to give you time to focus on that younger student. So I have always looked at who needs me most. Typically, that's the child in early elementary school. At least with my kids, that's been the case because they are not as independent yet. And so I've had a different focus each year, depending on which child needs me most. Who am I going to prioritize making sure that I'm reading to them, that I'm listening to them read, that I'm really grading everything. As my kids have gotten older, I'm like, okay, I trust that you can go read that book on your own and we'll talk about it later. And it's not a big deal. What are some other things, though, that you might want to consider, for the students that you have when it comes to planning? Because it does change from year to year. And I know, like, high schoolers, they get very independent. They might have a job or things like that as well. So how do you kind of plan around those types of things?
I think you need to be realistic about the amount of time that whoever the homeschool parent is has to homeschool. If you are working, it takes, Sunny, juggling. You have to say, like, how much time am I going to have to do X, Y, and Z? And for me, that was one of the beauty parts of Sonlight, is that literally it all shows up. If I need it, it is in the box. And so I don't have to go to the library and hunt stuff down, because there were a lot of years I did not have that kind of time to hope I would find the right book or wait for it to be ordered or somebody else has it checked out. I was like, wrong. I need it to be in the box. But I did have time to read because we always had soccer practice and karate and somebody was swimming. And so I had a lot of that one-on-one time. We used to joke, I don't know why they call it homeschooling. We do this in the car. But because we would take one to soccer practice and then me and little sister would sit and do all the reading and I would listen to her and I would, make sure her math was right. And then of course, like, we're at a school with a field and a playground. And so as soon as your work was done, you got to go on the swings, which really, cut down on the attitude while we were doing it. But be realistic about how much time you have. Do you have, a lot of, like, something you have to travel for? Are you taking care of a family member? Is there a medical thing? Are we moving this year? Are we having a baby this year? Like, those might not be the years to do really high intensity stuff. Maybe it's easier to combine because you just cannot read 2 sets of everything. That might work better. Like Christy said, sometimes the fight over trying to combine is just not worth it. But being realistic about what else we have going can help you focus how we need to handle the academic calendar.
Yeah, and I think with that, especially as they get into the late middle school, early high school years, I think it's important to keep it in check. I've told before about how I have a son who, around late middle school, he is a creative. He is so creative, and what makes his heart sing is drama. He's always in a play. He plays the guitar. He writes music. He's in a band, and they have band practice every week and guitar practice every week. And he's running cross country, and he has a part-time job. And there have been years that we have said no, just no. Pick this many things and this is what we're going to do. And then there have been other years where we discussed it and said, okay, I'm willing to take him and commit to this for him to learn the lesson of himself. I think he needs to learn for himself because he's convinced he can do all of these things well. And at the, mid-semester, he comes to me and says, I don't have any time to write. And that he loves to write. He writes constantly. And he was frustrated multiple times during the year because he had signed up for everything. And I said, remember this conversation that we had? He said, I know, you guys were right. And I should have done that, But that was something we felt like it was important for him to come to that. So it wasn't just always us saying it, because we've been saying it for a couple of years. And so it was the year he started driving on his own some, and that was good. So I think that can just keeping it in check, and you can, do different things, whether you just put a boundary down and say we're doing this many things, or everyone can pick this many things, or whatever. I just think it's important to decide how you're going to keep it in check.
Yeah, so you mentioned high school. Let's talk about high school. This is something that always worries people, in that you do have to plan ahead a little more so that your student can graduate, and figuring out their credits and all of those things. I know too, sometimes people want their student to transfer into school in high school, or they're going to do dual enrollment. So let's talk about all those different things, and reassure people. Obviously, we all have students at that age now, and you too have students who have graduated. So let's talk about the high school credits, and when should you start kind of loosely planning at least what your student's going to be doing in high school, and how much of that do you allow them to do on their own?
We started planning for that probably in the middle of middle school, probably 7th grade, because I wanted to make sure that finishing up that 7th grade year and then choosing for 8th grade set us up for success in high school, which turned out to be like, there was nothing super duper special about having planned that ahead that made it work. We went by the basically the public school graduation standards credits, because all the colleges around us had that expectation. And so it was like, it worked for us, because then when my kids applied to local colleges, by local I mean like in our state, and they had fulfilled all the requirements that the colleges were used to seeing in public school students, it was a very smooth and easy. So it was 4 years of history, 4 years of math, 4 years of English, I think 4 years of science, 4 years of foreign language, of fine art, a handful of other things. And like, that was, how it went. I had one who homeschooled all the way through high school, 2 who partially went to high school and partially homeschooled. I have 1 in high school now. The plan was, speaking of planning really far ahead, the plan was that they could all just go to high school and stay there and graduate from public high school. And so far, I'm 0 for 3 on the 4 years in high school thing, because they turned into real people with their own plans and things that I could not predict, like COVID. And so here we are again, making a plan and then seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think we started, maybe in middle school as well. I think it's really good, and it's important to get buy-in from them and having them as part of the plan. And I think this is a good way to include the parent who is not the main homeschooling parent. My husband is not a planner, but he enjoyed talking to them about I liked giving them options, and we did different things in high school, even as public school students. And so I will say, hey, when did you take Algebra 1? And so they could see, okay, this is what he did. This is what I did. This is what your brother did. This is what your other brother did, and give them some options. Oh, I had this friend though that did both of these maths in the same year. And, then she went on and she became a doctor, like whatever is important to them, they're going to start developing that, and you're going to start to see their strengths and the subjects that they're going to fly in and be more interested in. And maybe you don't know exactly what they might major in college when they're in 7th grade. Most people don't know that. That's fine. You don't need to pressure for that right now, but maybe you might start to say, okay, I'm thinking more science, math. I'm thinking more arts based, you might get to an idea about that. You might have known that in 2nd grade, But I think it's good to start thinking about that and just kind of giving them knowledge. You're becoming more of a coach, and you're telling them, here are things you might not know because you've never done this before, and it's kind of fun. And you can, there's all kinds of options. Yes, you could take this language or this language. We took this language in my state. My husband lived in a different state. He took this language, and you can kind of start to decide, what are you going to do? And it kind of becomes fun for them. It's a good conversation. And I think middle school is a good time to start doing that. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can feel daunting at first, but it can be fun too when it becomes a conversation and you're just kind of being that coach and kind of, I wish somebody had told me this when I was in 7th grade. Think of those things that you want to tell them, and you get to do that. And that makes it fun, I think.
Well, and I love what you said about giving them options. We tended to do the same thing, where it's like, you have to take English, but you can tell me what you would like to study.
Mm-hmm.
I had one who was like, I want to do British literature. And I had one who was like, I remember when she did that. I'm never doing that. And like, both are valid, but I could say, you don't have to do that. You have all these choices, tell me what you're interested in, what you would like to be doing. And so there's a little bit of latitude there. I am not a mom who cared deeply if you took calculus. I figure if you need calculus to pursue something you want to do, you'll take calculus. If not, then you probably don't need it. Depending on your goals, depending on your career plans, depending on what college you want to go to, depending on a million things. And so I said, you have to take all of these maths up to this point. After that, you have choices. And I have one who took statistics instead of like trigonometry and loved it and is actually using it in her college classes. And I never took statistics. I never even considered a choice like that. But for her, it was the right thing. And so the expectation is you have to take 4 years of math. What that looks like can be different for every kid. And that's kind of the beauty part of homeschooling high school.
Yes. And speaking of making plans of things that you could never predict, yesterday I had a conversation with my high schooler, and he came up with this brilliant thing that I would have never put on him, but he himself said, I am really interested in chemistry and physics, and I'm really interested in math. And his math trajectory so far has been such that he is not, just based on his own choices and our decisions as we've gone along together, we've had requirements for him, but his math is not, he's not finished with some things that another brother finished way before that, so he's not gone ahead, and he's been kind of considering, should I start geometry mid-year and try to finish it? We've kind of thought through that together, and neither one of us were excited about starting mid-year in a math, that we've never done that before. But he came to me yesterday and he said, I think I have a plan. I think I know what I want to do. And I was like, let's hear it. He wants this summer to look at, we have done both Math UC and Saxon, and he likes the teacher we bought from Sonlight, the Dive DVDs or whatever, the videos for Saxon for Algebra 2, that integrates geometry. And we've also have the Math UC geometry videos. And he said, I think this summer, just like as an independent study, I would like to watch those videos on my own. I think that would be fun. And I'm like, great. And then next year, he would like to double up in math and take 2 math courses at the same time. And I've had a son that did that successfully before, but he's choosing it. It's his idea. And he's doing a summer of independent study where he's going to be ready to jump in. He's doing, not going to be using Saxon, but he remembers that teacher. He liked him. I think I'm going to use those videos and just see how they put it together. Then that'll help me on the ACT. And so he's thought this through. He's got great plans. And so you get to start seeing them grow in that kind of, that's a pretty wise decision, I think. And so I could have never predicted that he would have done that, but I was excited about it. So that's what he's doing this summer. So those are things you can't predict as you're planning, and it's kind of unconventional. And I wouldn't ever tell you that to do that in a booth, probably, but those kind of things pop in too, and they're great.
And if you had said, you know what you're going to do this summer is you are going to watch all those geometry videos because I think you need to be more prepared for the blah, 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 he would be like, hard pass, Mom. Like, I don't know that I'll be doing that. And, you know, but when it comes from them, again, they turn into people with like opinions and plans, and you could not possibly have predicted that. But here it is. And so, like you said, you got to make a plan and then bend.
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things that I actually really enjoy about homeschooling teens is that they do start to figure out, oh, this is what I want to do. I mean, just yesterday, I was asking my daughter, hey, I think this is what we're going to order for next year. What do you want to do? And then she goes, you know, what I'm most interested in is getting as much college out of the way as inexpensively as I can, as soon as I can. So I was like, okay, we need to start looking at that. You know, as somebody that had student loans out the wazoo, you know, I was like, oh yes, hey, get it as inexpensively as you can while you're still in high school. You know, I was like, okay, we need to research what do we have in our state. Some states, well, you can do like free college classes for high school students. Fortunately, I'm not in one of those, but I would encourage you to look at your state homeschool organization and find out those types of things. Because if your students just taking their gen ed classes, why should they have to spend more for that, you know, once they've graduated? Or if they can graduate early, if they can do internships, if they can do all these extra things because they have more freedom and flexibility as a homeschooled student, why not give them that opportunity? You know, I love, one of you mentioned talking about the classes you took in high school, and my husband and I both graduated from public high schools, him in a small school in a small town. I lived in the suburbs in a big high school, and even still, there were basically two tracks. It was like, are you going to college or are you not? Here's all the math classes you take. Here's all the science classes you take. We did not have a huge amount of flexibility even in, you know, okay, do I want to take astronomy or anatomy, or does it have to be chemistry, physics, you know, whatever science classes. I was a total science girl and majored in science, so I took everything. But, you know, for kids that are not into that, you know, or if they don't want to take calculus, right, it's not like a moral decision. Do you have to take calculus in high school? Those types of things. And going to some of my state's high school events actually reassured me with, oh, I can be more flexible and I can do what my student wants to do. And, you know, I never would have guessed, because my daughter does want to go more into the fine arts, but she's looking at what's my backup plan if that doesn't work out. And so she has kind of come to the conclusion that I need to start looking at those college credits as well. So really, I think leaving the opportunities open for your kids and making sure that they do have the credits they need to do what they want to do is important. But really, the sky is the limit when it comes to what type of classes they want to take. So yeah, I think holding on to those plans loosely is so important. When it comes to the plan, though, I know we did not talk about, like, is this something, should you write it down? Do you just talk about it with your student? You know, how do you kind of stay on track? Especially, we all have multiple kids, so you've got different things going with different kids. How do you keep track of all of that? And when do you say, okay, enough flexibility here, we need to have a plan at this point? What is our plan? How do you figure that out?
I'm a paper girl. I write it down. There's something not just in having it written, like typed out, but there's something in the brain to hand connection that makes me feel like I've really thought it out better. That could just be me, but if there's any other paper people out there, that's how I do it. And I just make a list, and, you know, list each kid, what have we just finished? What are we doing next? You know, if there's any, like, we have to be finished with something by, you know, a certain, you know, long-term plan out, I included that. And then honestly, the best thing I did was I had a homeschool mom friend. to talk it out with. And we would either get together or even on the phone or over lunch, kind of once or twice in the, winter to spring that Christy was talking about, saying like, okay, so for this kid, we're doing this. This is going really well. This is not. And like just having somebody to stop and ask you questions and be like, well, what do you like about this? Well, what if you're not going to use that? Like, what are you looking for instead? Was so valuable to me that, and then I could write it down and have a good plan. And like Christy said, write it in pencil because you might change your mind. And then if you go to convention, you might find something that you didn't even know you were going to love. And so,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I did it.
Yeah, I love paper too, like Jen said. I have kids that love different things though. My oldest loves a good digital plan. He has one of his favorite things in life. Every time I see him on breaks, he's 21 now. He has a different color for everything that he does. So if he's volunteering at church, it's one color. If he's, got work, work is on in one color. Each subject that he has, all of his classes are in different colors. And he has this beautiful plan digitally, and he can look at the week and say, oh, wow, that's crazy, and then what can I change? Okay, well, I'll move this lunch around with this person and I'll do this. And he's constantly telling me the details. See how this week went? And he'll flip back 3 weeks and he's like, look at this. I was dying this week, and it's so fun to catch up with him. So digital planner makes him happy. My second son loves his paper planner. He has a paper planner and he loves filling that out. And I will write in, the schedule, just like Jen talked about, and I do it all in pencil. I plan ahead, for each student. And I wanted to mention, because we just touched on this, I think Jen touched on credits, and just quickly about credits. I think in this land of opportunity and freedom that we have with homeschool, it can be easy to kind of, say, oh, we can do anything because it's so great, and just know whenever you're doing credits, for the transcript, think about the person that's going to see this at this college. They're going to look at a lot of transcripts. You want it to be something that they can recognize. So if, you do something unconventional, my first year with my oldest, I thought I had heard about middle school credits. So I was kind of hung up on oh, he needs to get middle school credits because people are getting, and the person that I talked to at my school basically said, I try to make it simple. And if you write Algebra 2, they're going to know they already did Algebra 1 and geometry. And so other people may feel different, like, oh, write that on there. It'll give you another credit. But if you have 530 credits, that's not really going to impress anybody because everybody knows we have 24 hours a day. And so, if you can simplify your credits, think about the major subjects, look through the Sonlight levels. There's a really good high school graphic. And if you have something in every one of those categories, and then check with your state, see what your requirements are, and try to keep it simple, and think about that person that's looking at the transcript and think what would make sense to, and maybe even check with some people that went to a college your son or daughter are interested in, and ask them, how did you handle this? Whatever question you have. I think just deciding on credits, that can help you. But just keep it simple and know that, you think, oh, I'm going to have this many credits, and if it becomes this big number, then eventually people are going to say it's going to cease to be meaningful, because it's going to be like, oh, they couldn't really do well at 8,000 things. So yeah, that's my advice on credits.
Something else about that too, if your student is applying for scholarships, you're going to want to look at what are those requirements, right? Do you need certain SAT, ACT scores? Do you need a certain amount of, community service or things like that? So I would start looking at those things, considering those things early in the process if you think that they're going to be applying for that. And I love that you brought that up, because your son with his color-coded calendar, that is my life, my phone. I was like, that's my calendar. Like I've got a widget on my screen in all different colors for different things. I love that. And so for my daughter who's in high school, in Excel, I keep a grade book and a list of all the courses she's keeping. That's more just so I don't forget when it comes time to make the official transcript. But I do, because I have a tendency, I think, to be like, oh yeah, you're good at this, you're good at this. But I like details. I just thrive with details. So I keep weighted grades for her just because it makes sense in my mind. I don't think you have to do that. I know a lot of people do not do that. But for me, I would not feel right giving her an A unless I knew, okay, well, she got a 100 on this, she got a 90 on that. Like, I just like that. So that is me. So look kind of at you as teacher, mom, record keeper, like what matters to you. But some people just say, okay, if you did all the work and you passed it, that's an A. You get to decide what that standard is and if your student is meeting it. So it definitely does not have to be that thought out. I just really like those details. For my younger student, I don't keep grades for him. He's young enough. I don't need to worry about that at all at this point. So it's really just for high school because I want to make sure that my daughter is prepared when she goes to apply to college or apply for scholarships or those types of things. But again, if you have a student who is not planning to go to college, our state homeschool organization actually said, we highly encourage you, just keep a transcript regardless. That way, if that student's plans change, they're ready to go. They have what they need coming out of high school. So even if you're like, oh no, my student's not going to college, keep a transcript, just a list of the classes they've taken and what grades you would assign. But again, your plans, like I said, hold on to them loosely. I don't keep really strict plans I didn't for my daughter either when she was in elementary school. That's been a recent development with high school because now it matters. But again, kind of the flexibility, like you said, Christy, there's so many options. It can be a little overwhelming and it might feel like, oh, I don't need to keep track of all of this, but your record keeping, just keep it simple, loosely plan. What does your student enjoy right now? What do you think they're going to need next year? Before we wrap up, is there any last advice or encouragement you guys would share?
My biggest piece of advice for high school would be to keep that transcript you're talking about, just what classes did she do, what grade did she get, as you go along. I promise you, by junior year, you will not remember at all what we read freshman year or how it went. You just will not. Encouragement, you can totally do it. If you are a planner, by all means, wring all the joy out of planning all year if that is what makes your heart sing. If you are not a huge planner, you can really focus on right now and the next thing, and also make that work. If you want to order in time for the sale, that seems like it's coming right up. And if you're like, you know what, we're not going to do this until over the summer for whatever reason, that is equally okay. So
yeah, I think that, again, with homeschooling being this land of freedom and opportunity, we can sometimes have parents who say kindergartner about a 3-year-old or 4th grader for a 6-year-old or something like that. Plan more to put your child in kindergarten at an age that they're ready developmentally, socially, to be with other kids, like on Sunday at church or that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I thought about more so than they're so brilliant, I should just say they're a 5th grader. That's something that I hear a lot.
We could do a whole nother hour on that.
Yes, we could. And the other thing is use pencil. Again, use pencil when you're planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would agree with that. I've always called my kids the grade they're in by their age. It doesn't matter to me if one is reading 2 years ahead and behind in math or whatever. I call it by their age. Once your student gets to high school, you can look at graduation date and see. Some people do like to keep the child home another year. Some like to graduate early. You've got those options. But yeah, I think don't be in such a hurry. I know sometimes we get excited because we see all the cool material in the curriculum and, oh, let's go learn this. Don't push too fast, because now that our students are older, I really miss those sweet, times when you would cuddle up and read the preschool books together, and it feels like it has flown by. So enjoy where you're at. Plan for the future, but don't hold too tightly to it. And if you're struggling to figure out oh my goodness, there's so many options. What do I do? Definitely get into the Sonlight Connections app with us. Ask those questions. We would love to help you and help you figure out how to customize it for the kids that you have, because all of us are different. We've all tried different things because our kids are all different, and we would love to walk you through that. So Christy and Jen, thank you so much for being here with us today and talking about this topic that I think can stress a lot of people out needlessly. It really is fun to plan. So if you have any of those planning questions, please let us know. And thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny.